Well, just to model technology, I'm going to model trying to plug my laptop into the projector for you today. Wish me luck. So as we're trying to do this, I just wanted to take an informal poll, and we're going to use a technology called our hands. So what I'd love to know is how many of you are local to Spain? Oh, a few? Europe? Asia? Africa? Australia, New Zealand? South America? North America? Hey, that's where I'm from. Well, I just wanted to kind of see, I saw on everyone's name badges, I was happy to sit into one of the workshops yesterday that everyone has their country on their name badge. And something that I love about coming to conferences like this one is that we all have a commonality. No matter where you're from, no matter what your primary language is, we have a common goal, and that's to help make our students be better versions of ourselves. So tomorrow can be a future that we all want to live and retire in. So I really want to talk to you about my experience in supporting the students in my hometown of Chicago, Illinois. All right, so this is where I'm from. This is Chicago, Chi-Town, the Windy City. And I worked in Chicago for over 12 years as an educator. I've taught everything from the tiniest little 3-year-olds all the way up to graduate students. I will say that 3-year-olds are much easier to teach than graduate students. They listen better. But I really want to talk to you about how technology has transformed education in Chicago public schools and why it's so important for us. I want to start off by thinking about a book that I read when I was a kid. Does anyone read The Hobbit or seen the movie by J.R.R. Tolkien? For those of you who haven't, there's a movie, you can go see it. But essentially what the theme of this book is, there's a wizard named Gandalf the Grey, and there's a little hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. And Gandalf wants to go on an adventure, and Bilbo is shy and afraid and does not want to go on the adventure at all. So Gandalf walks up to Bilbo's door and knocks on it. Tuk, tuk, tuk. And he says, "I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure that I am arranging." And I remember reading this when I was 10 years old and thinking, ooh, how amazing is that? You could just wake up one day and decide to go on an adventure, and then you can invite people with you to it, like a dinner party. I thought that was so amazing. I could just say, I feel like having a lovely adventure for 8 today. Would you like to come with me? And then when I became a classroom teacher, I thought, how amazing would it be if our classrooms could be adventures that we could invite our students on of any age. But here's the thing about that quote. The second half is, it's very difficult to find anyone to join on this adventure. And as a university professor and as a classroom teacher, trying to find new ways to use technology to create better opportunities for my students, I constantly felt like Gandalf the wizard. I would walk up to my colleagues and I would say, let's try this amazing new thing. Come with me on this adventure. Let's use technology to open doors. Like Alex said, let's find ways to connect to one another using digital tools. And people would say, no, Jenny, you're crazy. I don't have time for that. I've been doing it this way my whole life, and I'm fine. Why should I change? I don't want to go with you on your adventure. And that was really frustrating for me. The funny thing is in the book The Hobbit, this is actually Bilbo Baggins' response. He says, I should think it's hard for you to find someone to go on an adventure. He says, they make you late for dinner. They're nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. And this is literally what my coworkers, my fellow teachers would say to me when I'd try to get them to stay after school and use iPads. They'd be like, Jenny, we don't have time for that. If we stayed after and did that with you, we'd be late for dinner. This is uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. And this really reminds me of Everett Rogers' diffusion of innovation skills. Anyone seen this bell curve before? It's a really great model developed by a sociologist, actually in 1962, talking about the way that innovation and new ideas spread through an organization. He says that the top 16% are innovators and early adopters who are quick to try new things. The middle 68% are the people who are eventually maybe going to join, but that last 16%, the laggards, are constantly digging their feet in and refusing to change. And as I thought about the book The Hobbit, I realized that the innovators are the wizards and the laggards are the hobbits. And I thought to myself, how can we take a look at those habits and find out why they keep saying, I can't? All of you are here at EDULEARN. You're taking time out of your day. You spent money on a ticket. You believe, hopefully, since you're here, that there can be something better for our students if we leverage technology to create new opportunities. But when you go back to your schools and your institutions of learning, does everyone always agree with you? I constantly hear from people, I can't do this. But here's the thing about the words I can't and our colleagues. It's not coming from a bad place, it's coming from a very honest place. It's coming from a place of fear and disbelief, a place of, I'm not really sure if this is for me. And that fear is really based on a deep fear of failure. So as we're trying to build our wizards and we're thinking about that fear of failure, we need to kind of go back to that as educators. Why, as educators, are we uniquely afraid of failure? Well, failure in education usually is talking about test scores and grades, like you failed the PISA, you got a poor score, you failed your test. And fail is always the antithesis, the opposite of success in school. But as a teacher, we need to think more about how failure can help us learn and why iteration is a good thing. I want to introduce you to a little boy named Marty. Marty is about to turn 3 years old. He's so excited. It's his birthday. And he's going to get a cupcake this morning for breakfast, which is odd. I don't know about you, but normally don't give kids cupcakes for breakfast. And his parents want to sing him happy birthday. I want you to watch what his father does as he's blowing out the candle, and I want you to ask, what would you do in this situation?
Happy birthday to you.
Now you can blow it out.
Try again. Blow up here. You're terrible at this. You're gonna light your head on fire. Blow it up here. Whoa, dude. Oh my goodness. Right here, right there. Blow. What are you?
Now, if we were going to watch this video, you can see Marty's trying desperately to blow out the candle, and he can't. And his father, if you could hear him, is saying, no, blow right there. Marty gets right up, he almost burns his face. His father says, no, Marty, open your mouth, blow, use air. And he's trying desperately. His dad's even trying to open his mouth for him, but Marty can't figure it out. Now, at this point, how many people would blow out Marty's candle for him? I would. His dad gets up, though. He's like, no, wait a second, I have an idea. Marty says, slow down, Daddy. And his mom says, yes, slow down, Daddy. So then Daddy comes back, and he brings something with Marty. Do you see what he brings him? A drinking straw. And now Marty takes it, he huffs and he puffs, and he blows the candle out. Now Marty, yeah. And Marty, if you could see him, says, wow, can we eat it now? He's very focus-driven. Now, what I love about this video and this story is that the dad could have easily, thank you. The dad could have easily given up and blown out his candle. Now, I am here to admit to you and to confess that I have blown out many children's candles, which is very concerning because I don't have any children, which means I'm blowing out other people's kids' candles. I go to birthday parties, I'm like, hurry up, let's move on, blow out the candle, let's eat the cake now. But I'm also doing it in my classroom. I think about when I scaffold for my students and I give them support. Am I allowing them that moment of failure so that they can iterate and they can try again? There's a famous acronym that's going around right now. My friend Ken Shelton was the first one who told it to me. But that fail is not the end of learning, but rather an acronym that's talking about the beginning of learning. That when we allow our students to fail, they have that first attempt in learning. But moreover, beyond that first fail is what happens afterwards. Do we allow our students subsequent attempts in learning? And moreover, as educators, do we allow ourselves subsequent attempts in learning? Think back to when you first joined the industry of education, your first time teaching. For those of you who are professors, the first lecture you gave. You might have been nervous, you might have been worried, like, oh, I don't know if I have this. Anytime we start something new, we risk failure, but that's okay, that's how we learn as a human species. Now, as we're thinking about what we're doing as educators. And as we're thinking about the fear of failure and trying new things in technology, I have to quote one of my favorite people, Queen Elsa of Arendelle, and say, we all just need to let it go. And if we can let it go, then we can help our colleagues come from Bilbo Baggins' hobbits and turn into great wizards who are willing to take risks and use the magic of technology to transform opportunities for our students. And so I want to talk to you about how school can be an adventure, or we can throw an E on there, adventure. And I want to talk to you about school as an adventure with the time that we have remaining. So I have 3 tips for you for arranging a wonderful adventure. The first one is to learn we must create. And I think Alec did a beautiful job of describing this in his talk. Now, as a classroom teacher, when I first got iPads in my classroom, I spent so much time trying to figure it out. In fact, when I first won a grant, because my school couldn't afford iPads, I won a grant to get them into my classroom, I cried. I sobbed. And my husband said to me, Jenny, you're so happy you got iPads. It's so cute you're crying. And I said, no, I'm not crying because I'm happy. I'm crying because now I have to do all the stuff I made up in the grant. I have no idea what I'm doing. I am terrified. And so then I spent $2,000 US on apps. I went into the iTunes store and I looked up mathematics and I bought every app I could buy with my own credit card. My husband was like, you need to stop. But that's because I was really focused on consumption. I really wanted my students to have the math apps they needed in my math class to be successful. But essentially all I was doing was digitizing worksheets, and so my students were miserable. I was miserable. Nobody was getting any new learning from the technology. And it wasn't until one little boy in my classroom taught me a lesson that I realized I was doing it wrong. I had a little boy named Eddie. Now, Eddie had been my student for 3 years. And he had been my student for 3 years because he wasn't able to pass the maths exam that was the standardized test that allowed him to move to the next grade. In fact, we were about to move him into a special classroom because he was so challenged in mathematics. And then I saw an example from a mathematician, a math teacher out of California named Dan Myers, that said that we need to give our students more authentic learning opportunities and allow them to create their own mathematics. And by this he meant find the natural and authentic math in your world. So I took my phone to the grocery store, and I was going to make tacos that night, so I needed cheese, and I recorded myself trying to find cheese. If you could hear it, it would be me narrating my very exciting grocery trip. I would say, look at these bags of cheese. I need a bag of cheddar cheese for my dinner tonight. This bag of cheese is 8 ounces, and, oh, there it is, 8 ounces, and it costs $2.99. The other bag of cheese was another size, and it cost another amount. And essentially, any math teachers in the audience? Yay, hooray for math. So this is essentially a rates problem. I wanted my students to find the unit rate for price of cheese per ounce in US dollars. Well, Eddie jumped on a screencasting app on his iPad called Explain Everything that allowed him to write and narrate his thinking. And he created the following screencast, and we really do need audio for this, so wish me luck.
The cheese. $10. That was $10, and it was 32 pounds and 32 ounces of shredded cheese. Then she went and found a little bag of cheese for 8 ounces for $3. And this was $10. So I did 32 divided by 8. But she trying to find which one she will have more cheese to save less on. So I did 32 divided by 4, and it was 8. So 4 is my answer, because I was guessing on that one, because I remember that 8 times 5 equals 40. So then I noticed that, so I did 4 of them. Each 8 ounces. So both of these equal 32 ounces. All this, 32 ounces. And one of these is 32 ounces.
So Eddie goes on in the next slide, and he figured out that all of that was 32 ounces. Now, for those of you who aren't math teachers, that was beautiful math, especially because we hadn't taught anything around fractions and common denominators yet. He was essentially inventing his own strategy. He didn't find the unit rate, but he was able to compare two different fractions, $3 to 8 ounces and $10 to 32 ounces. In this slide, he makes a mistake, and it's because he didn't label his units, which is a whole nother math frustration that teachers have. But the thing is he was able to create really thoughtful and strategic mathematical thinking that he was then able to see. It's metacognition, right? Now, the thing is he makes a mistake. So at the end, he has the wrong answer. And if this had been a worksheet, he would have written down the wrong answer, and that would have been the end of the day. The difference is we had this video of his thinking. So the next day, he came into school, and he sits down, and I said, "Hey, Eddie, thank you so much for your effort yesterday. I really enjoyed watching your math video. I learned a lot about you as a mathematician. I'd love for you to watch it again." And he said, "Why do you want me to watch it? I did it. I know what I did." And I said, No, I just want you to see it, because I wanted to see if he could see his mistake. So he hits play, he watches it, and he starts kind of what we call in Chicago peacocking. It means you're really proud of yourself, like a peacock. So he's like, yup. And he said, "All of that's 32 ounces, all of that, yep, look at me doing math." And then he gets to this part of the video where he makes the mistake, and he picked up his iPad and threw it across the room. Don't worry, guys, it was an iPad 1. Those things are bricks. It did not break. After my heart started beating again, he picked it up, and he looked at me, and he said, "Miss Magiera, I made a mistake, and I'd like to try it again." Now, that was music to my ears. This was a student who for 3 years was failing in my classroom, who never wanted to do his homework, much less his classwork. And all of a sudden, for the very first time in his life, he could see his own learning, and he could see his own thinking, and he was motivated to try again. That year, Eddie not only passed my class, he had the highest mathematics score in the entire city of Chicago. That is 500,000 students. He had the highest scaled math score, because all of a sudden he could see his thinking. My second tip is that students can be your best advocates. When you're advocating for second-order change, I don't know if anyone's a Bob Marzano fan, but thinking about that shift in school culture, it's really hard to convince our colleagues. As I said, when you have a Gandalf and a Bilbo, when you're thinking about wizards and hobbits, it's hard for us to convince our friends to go on the adventure. I was having a shift when I was trying to move our students into teaching computer science in grades pre-K through 12. I had this statistic on my desk. 51% of all STEM jobs by 2018 will be in computer science, according to a White House jobs report. I really believed it was important that our students understood coding and computer science to be successful in the new job industry that's going to be coming when they reach adulthood. And yet we didn't have any computer science courses in any of our classrooms in Chicago. The reason why we didn't have any computer science classrooms is because we didn't have time and we didn't have money. And so my students decided to create a viral marketing campaign to convince the adults in our school district to bring coding. I asked my students what they wanted to do, and they said, "Do you know what convinces people to watch YouTube, Miss Magiera, and what will make them watch our video?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Music parodies." So they created this.
I'm about to code some tasks. Only got 20 lines in my Chromebook. I'm coding, writing HTML. This is coding awesome. I'm about to code some tasks.
So, thank you. So my students created this video. Here was the problem. In the part of Chicago that I live in, Students don't have access to the internet at home, and they don't have technology. The people who are decision makers were in parts of the city that also didn't have a lot of technology, our PTO, our parent-teacher organization. But my students were problem solvers, and so this is what would happen. I would come up to my school front door every morning in the snow and freezing, and my students would be standing outside with 3 very confused-looking grown-ups standing out front of the school. And they'd say, Miss Magiera, take out your phone, show them our YouTube video. So I would take out my phone, I would show them the YouTube video, and then the next morning there'd be 3 new parents, and 3 new parents, and it spread virally through an analog way. Now eventually it did reach people who did have internet access, and the parents started talking, and they started showing it to local community members. My students were thrilled to see the view count go up on YouTube. They would keep refreshing it at school, and they'd be like, look, Miss Magiera, another view, and I'd say, that's you just refreshed the computer. But the point is that people, it was them, but other people did see this video. So much so that the parent-teacher organization did come together, and they learned about free programs like Scratch from MIT and Code.org. And in these schools now today, because of the students and their video, we teach computer science in every grade from kindergarten, from 5 years old all the way to 18 years old, every single day. Now, this became really exciting for me as a teacher, but then I was dismayed when I went into one of our classrooms and I saw 3 little girls sitting to the side. And they weren't coding, and they weren't smiling, and they looked really bored and frustrated. So I walked up to the 3 young ladies and I said, Katie, Bianca, Daria, what are you doing? Why aren't you coding? And they said, oh, Miss Magiera, we don't like coding class. I said, why? Tell me more. They said, well, I can't code. I'm just a girl. Oh, it just broke my heart. So I did what any respectable, professional teacher would do. I triple doggy dared them to code. I said, I dare you to code. I believe you can code. I challenge you to code. And I'm going to make a bet with you. I'll give you a wager. If you can't learn to code by the end of today, then you can spend the rest of coding class for the rest of the year doing whatever you want. The teacher was standing behind them saying, do not promise these girls, they're just going to Snapchat all day. Like, hopefully Snapchat wasn't 14 steps, but that was probably what they were going to do. I said, no, I have confidence. Now, this story begins on a Monday. I dared the students. I challenged the students on a Monday. I want you to watch this video that the girls made afterwards, and I want you to pay attention to the days of the week.
We're going to be doing a dance with Dash to the song Rolling in the Deep by Adele. So we have to we're going to be doing a bunch of coding, and we're going to make him do some cool moves to the beats, and yeah. But this is our first time doing it, so, well, not our first day, but our first time making a dance, so we're going to see how it plays out. Yeah.
There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever pitch and it's bringing me out the dark. Finally, I can see you crystal clear. Go ahead and sell me out and I'll lay your fish bare. See, I'll leave with every piece of you. Don't underestimate.
Okay. Did anyone see? So remember, I challenged the girls on Monday. What day did they create this video? Thursday, exactly. So this is what happened. I came back on Tuesday and I said, good morning, ladies. How did it go? Did you learn how to code? And they said, no, I didn't learn how to code. And I said, oh, I guess you can do whatever you want for the rest of the time. And they said, well, actually, Miss Magiera, what we really want to do with the time is learn how to code. And I was like, mwah, ha, 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 ha. Yes, dance puppets. And it made me so happy because that was my evil plan. But you see, the girls had more to it. The girls were part of a dance group called Orcheisis. And in this dance group, they had 4 dance members. But there were only 3 of them at school because the 4th little girl was sick. And they had a problem because they had a dance show coming up. So then they decided to use code to create a new dance routine that this robot could dance alongside them and be part of their dance troupe. They were solving problems. But what's more was not only did they solve this problem and create this video, was they had some deep embarrassment because, you know, girl power. And they were really upset that they had said girls can't do something. So they decided to found a Let's Code group for girls and boys that reached across all of our schools and encouraged young people to learn how to code. They also created the following commercial for their club. Can you tell their dancers they choreographed that message? They were like, yeah. My third tip for you is to try something that scares you. Now, my role has been everything from classroom teacher to professor and also a school district administrator, which meant it was my job to run the school's technology for all schools in the entire city. And that was a lot of responsibility, and it was also very scary. So 3 weeks into my new job, this was a couple years ago, I had heard of something called Google Cardboard. How many of you have seen this before? I know some of you who were in Wendy's session yesterday got to play with them. Now, Google Cardboard is a virtual reality tool. It's made of cardboard, you stick your phone in it, and then you're able to auto-magically transport in a 360 view to anywhere in the world, and actually even in space. And I thought this is great because my students don't have the money to go on fancy field trips to cool places like Barcelona, Spain, but they can go through virtual reality. And so when I got this phone call from Google asking me if we wanted to be the first school in the world to use Google Cardboard, I was so excited and I said, absolutely, let's do it. But there was a problem. You see, I got this call at 12:44 a.m. on a Thursday. And I don't know about your school systems from where you're from, but in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States, schools make no decisions after noon on Thursday. It's essentially the weekend. We're like, it's too late. We're going to have to wait till Monday for that. No decisions. We're a little lazy. So we're thinking, what are we going to do? The superintendent said, no, it's too late, Jennie. It's too late for this. We can't make a decision. But I did it anyway. And that was a big risk for me. And at first, it didn't turn out very well to decide to go ahead and do this when everyone kept telling me I was crazy. You see, Bob Marzano, in his book about school transformation, School Leadership That Works, says to successfully create school change, you're going to have to live through a phase where people are angry and frustrated at you. And I lived through that in this story very much. You see, I got a lot of phone calls from parents, and I was really excited about creating this virtual reality experience for my students. And the parents could only say, you're putting phones on kids' faces? And they also said, but what about the lasers? Now, there are no lasers that shoot out of your phone in any shape or form, but the parent community were convinced that I was strapping laser phones to my kids' faces and zapping their brains, which would then melt out of their ears. So people were very angry at me. And I was a little bit nervous, but I decided to go forward because I thought that this experience was important for our students, and it was important for our kids to finally see something beyond their neighborhood. So on Monday morning, I said, this is my great last day of work, so let's go ahead and try it. And the car pulled up, and they brought the expedition kits, and the kids did go to amazing places like the rainforest, Spain, Australia, and they were able to experience things that they would never be able to see in their lifetime in a real, tangible way. They were so excited to explore. They were so thrilled. They were asking questions. questions, but I want you to watch this particular video, and I want you to look for the little girl in the green striped shirt in the back of the room. In this particular expedition, they are climbing Mount Everest, and they're about to reach the summit of the mountain. They're on the very last climb, and they're zooming around. And do you see the little girl in green? If you didn't see her, here she is a little bit more zoomed up. She was actually trying to climb the mountain. But then the video stops here because what happened next was she dropped the Google Cardboard, grabbed her knees, and began to hyperventilate. She was like, and I thought, oh my God, it's the lasers. So then I run over and I'm like, no, I have to save the child. She's like, lady. She didn't know my name yet because it was my 3rd week at school. Lady. And I said, yes. She said, I just don't think I should have to go to physical education class today. Now, after I realized that she was being funny and she was not actually having a heart attack, I started asking her questions, and she started to ask me questions. She wanted to know how people eat on the top of the mountain. She said, it looks too steep for there to be a McDonald's there. How do they walk up and get their food? And she said, is the air thick enough to breathe? And are my shoes going to be warm enough, or are my toes going to freeze? And these are great, deep curiosity questions that we want our learners to be asking. We want them to have wonder for the world they live in. And after a 10-second Google expedition, it became a catalyst, a start for so many wonders and curiosity about the world that this child would have never considered without that. So sometimes our risks can pay off. And what she said to me later was, I can't wait to tell my parents where I went today. Not what I learned, not what I saw, but where I went, because she truly believed she was there. So as we're thinking about ourselves and our colleagues and whether or not we are wizards truly and how we use these new tools and technologies to change the face of education around the world, I want you to think about this quote from Sir Ken Robinson. As educators, you are in the miracle business, and that is the best business to be in. So ladies, gentlemen, fellow educators, let's go out and let's make some miracles. Thank you.